Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Mental Wellbeing for Small Businesses. It's a Beyond Blue and Realise Business Q&A session. This is brought to you as part of New South Wales Government's Small Business Month, taking place all throughout October in New South Wales. October is also National Mental Health Month, and I'd like to thank Beyond Blue for participating in today's event with us. My name is Jacqueline, and I'm the Brand and Marketing Manager for Realise Business and your host for today's webinar. So before we commence, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community, and pay respect to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues joining us today. So just before I hand over, I'd like to run through some quick housekeeping notes. So first of all attendees are on mute, and we ask you to remain on mute for the duration of the webinar. Please use this chat box to ask questions. Ask your questions at any time, and you can bring it up the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, pushing on the chat icon at the bottom of the screen or by pressing Alt-H. Let us know by the chat box if you have any audio or video issues. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded. So I'd now like to introduce you to Realise Business CEO, Jackie Attard, who's devoted her career to empowering small business owners to run and grow successful businesses. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and welcome to everybody today. I'm going to be running this event with both Tim and Linda, and I'll get them to introduce themselves in a little while. But firstly, I'd just like to welcome everybody, and particularly those who this is your first event with Realise Business. Thank you for coming on board to this. This is a little bit of a different event to one that we typically do, but I think it's an extremely important topic. And I know you're going to get some great insights into the research that Beyond Blue have done, but also some practical applications and skills that you can tap into as well from Beyond Blue. But just let me just briefly give you a background on Realise Business. We've been established for over 30 years. And we're a bit of a unique not-for-profit in that we work in business and we help empower people to run successful businesses. And we're funded both by the state and federal government to run particular programs for them. We have a team of 22 advisors who have all diverse background and skill. And so this topic here is one that's very close to my heart because it's one that we as business advisors work with at all the time, and particularly in the last 6 months, our advisors have been working in very unique markets, and you know, the topic is one that I know you and a number of you are online, and I know that you are all very interested in how you can do the best with our clients in this on this subject. So firstly, Tim, I thank you for joining me. Tim Hoopman, I'll get you to introduce yourself, Tim.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join Beyond Blue and to come here and talk about a subject that's very, very important, which is mental health. And I've been a speaker for Beyond Blue, a volunteer speaker for 2.5 years now. And it's probably, from a volunteer perspective, one of the most joyous things that I've done in my career. And I love stepping out and into situations like this and talking about small business, talking about mental health and what people can do to look after themselves and to look after those around them. I've run my own small business for up to 15 years. And I just do joyous things like speaking with Beyond Blue, and I do some coaching and training for small business now as well. So I get to do a lot of things that I really love, which I'm very grateful for. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Tim. And of course, I've got Linda Sheehan from Beyond Blue. And Linda, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody today?
Hi, Jackie. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited and grateful for your time. I'm in the workplace team at Beyond Blue, which means I'm really lucky to get to work for an organisation that many of you will have heard of, maybe have supported before. In the workplace team, our goal is to help all Australians achieve their best possible mental health at work. And as a part of that, we've got a dedicated small business program, and that's why I'm here today. In my work before joining Beyond Blue, I worked for approximately 15 years in injury management and prevention, so a lot on both physical and mental health, particularly in workplaces. And at Beyond Blue, I'm very lucky to get to work with great people like Tim, and we get to go and speak with workplace audiences about workplace mental health. So I'm thrilled to be here, very grateful, and I hope something in this presentation today is useful for you. So I really encourage everyone to ask lots of questions and get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And Linda, you've got a few slides that you'd like to start and just introduce the new program that Beyond Blue have pulled together to help advisors.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Jackie. And yeah, that's my first slide. Thanks again for joining me. And to start with, I thought we'd briefly step through a bit of the why. So what is mental health and why are we talking about it for small business? So the World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Mental health relates to positive capacity and our ability to manage our behaviour, thoughts, and emotions. Another term for mental health is social and emotional well-being, a term sometimes preferred by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and those from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. A person's mental health is not always at optimal levels, and it can fluctuate over time. That's why you can view mental health as sitting on a continuum, much like the image you can see on the screen now, or a range. At the green end, this represents positive, healthy functioning, through to at risk in the middle, and red is where we might be experiencing more severe symptoms of mental health conditions. This idea of a spectrum or a continuum might resonate over 2020 more than ever, with our sense of coping shifting day by day or even hour by hour. Sometimes you might be feeling okay and able to cope with those challenges. Other times it might all feel too much. Positively though, our mental health is something that can be positively influenced. Just like our physical health, there are effective strategies and supports to help us build and protect good mental health. Our goal is to help people wherever they sit along that continuum. This includes keeping the healthy, having strategies ready for those at risk, and supports available when people need it. It's also useful and helpful to recall just how common mental health challenges are. Usually in Australia, it's estimated that 1 in 5 of us are likely to be impacted by poor mental health in any year. 2 million people live with anxiety and 1 million people live with depression. And almost 50% of us are likely to be impacted by poor mental health sometime over our lifetimes. Tragically, on average, more than 8 people in Australia take their lives every day, 6 of whom are men. Suicide is the leading cause of death for people in Australia aged between 11 and 44, and it's higher than the national road toll. Positively though, we have seen improvements and the effectiveness of some of the strategies we're seeing around workplace mental health. For example, in the construction industry, we've shown that certain strategies can be really effective in terms of reducing the risk of suicide in certain at-risk populations. So whilst we've come a long way around mental health, it's important for us to continue on this journey. Mental health is something that we can positively influence. Jump to the next slide. So a little bit about small business. Why are we focusing on small business mental health? Small businesses make up almost 97% of all actively trading businesses across Australia, and it's almost half of the workforce. As Australia's largest employment sector, small business is a really important setting to focus on mental health. We also know that small business owners, and particularly sole traders, have an increased risk of mental ill health and decreased wellness due to business stressors associated with running their business. We know, however, that the return on investment figures here are really promising. According to a 2014 report by PwC and Beyond Blue, for every dollar spent on workplace mental health, this got a $2.30 return on investment for the organisation. The analysis was even more promising for small business. Here, the return on investment was up to $15 for every dollar invested. Many workplace mental health programs, however, are often designed for larger organisations, and there's ongoing feedback that programs currently often don't meet the specific needs of small business. For example, recent research conducted by EveryMind, part of the Hunter Institute at the University of Newcastle, it showed that over 77% believed that tailored approaches for small business mental health were necessary. In the context of this year and the particular extra challenges we've seen with COVID, but also hangovers from the drought, from the bushfires and the floods, small business owners have said that almost 2/3 of them say that COVID-19 has negatively affected their mental health. So it's more important than ever that we look at mental health for small business. So as a part of our small business program, we've recently developed a new training program. It's free, it's online, and it's available to everyone. It's called Supporting Yourself and Small Business. It's got 4 modules, they're 20 minutes long, and they're self-directed lessons, and they cover an introduction to mental health and how to recognise when someone may need support, how people can look after their own well-being in the workplace and at home, how to have a conversation with a small business owner that you're worried about, and how to proactively support small business owners. The training was co-designed with the small business community, and it's been iterated and tested over many years. Importantly, it's a sort of program that you can go back to. So we're going to keep developing it, investing in it, and making it better. We've also designed it with other small business mental health partners. So EveryMind's a Head for Business program, and as BFEO's My Business Health is there as well. So I'll cut to the chase. We'll talk a bit more about the training and the Q&A, but we're really excited to be here today, and I hope we can delve a bit more into the how and the why it's been developed and some of the benefits. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. So what we plan to do today is just have a panel discussion with Linda and Tim. I've got some questions that I'll pose to them based on their experience and the research that Beyond Blue have done. And then we're going to open it up to questions from you, the audience, as well. So thank you for that overview, Linda. I'm curious to know, you mentioned some of the reasons why the course was created by Beyond Blue. But what were the results of your research that led Beyond Blue to develop this?
I think the really key thing that we've been told, and when we say research, we also include a lot of small business consultation. And Tim's a really great example of someone who's been on our small business reference group. But I think one of the key things around the small business community is they're so busy. I'm really mindful of the time of everyone logging on today. It's incredibly hard to get small businesses to have the time to engage in training, to engage in networking, and generally they're pretty hard to reach community. Some of the issues for small businesses, the particular challenges and some risks includes feelings of isolation, not having people to help out during busy times, and these have really been amplified this year. So the feedback we've got again and again is it's about upskilling and empowering the community around small businesses. So the way we've designed this training is really looking at small business advisors and all the places where small businesses already go, because the more that we can help everyone recognise the signs and encourage self-care. We can create a community of care around small businesses. So the training, it's for people that know small businesses, that work with small businesses, but also small businesses themselves, mindful that so many small businesses do so much business with other small businesses as well. But it's that sense of upskilling everyone with the goal of benefiting all. I think probably the last big trend we see really strongly in the research is that most people in Australia, again and again, we aren't very good at monitoring how our mental health is going. We tend to chronically overestimate our capacity to cope and how well we're doing. And we generally are pretty reluctant to seek help. To give you an example of that, one finding found that people experiencing symptoms of anxiety often would wait up to 8 years before seeking help. Likewise, in a study of police and emergency services workers, people would chronically overestimate how they were going. So the more we can upskill people to help each other is where we really start to see some improvements and benefits. The more I can keep an eye out for Tim and confidently have a chat with him, that's what the feedback keeps saying. That's some of the best ways we can all help ourselves and each other. I might throw to Tim there because I think he can expand a bit more about his role and practically what that looks like.
Thanks very much, Linda. I think this course is an absolute game changer. I'm just so excited that it's been released. I was fortunate enough to be on the pilot, and companies such as Xero, which are big in the small business area, obviously through their partners, the bookkeepers and accountants and tax advisors, have played a big role in it as well, and they have a very wide reach. But if I think about a lot of you sitting out there, you are frontline speaking and connecting with small business every day. And often what I saw over the last 3 or 4 years, because I ran a bookkeeping practice for many years, but over the last 4 or 5 years, what I saw was that there was no discussion about mental health. And yet, as Linda quite rightly points out, those people were small business owners themselves dealing with small business, and lots of people were in distress. And it doesn't matter where you sit. Sometimes it could be you in distress. Sometimes it could be your clients in distress. So the value on this course is just unbelievable because it brings together a whole wealth of information, and it starts to put it in a format that, and again, Linda spoke about, what I love about it is it's a go back to. We can go back to this course and you can look at each module individually, or you could go through the whole lot. Or if you're wanting to start a conversation and you're not feeling very comfortable, it's a great, you can go back to that module and have a look at what are some of the tips and tricks. So it's kind of a really good tool to have in your toolkit as a small business owner. If you're coaching or working with other small businesses, it's a great tool to have. So it's just wonderful. And I think the other point is that small business is so important in Australia, and often they don't take time for themselves and no one looks after them. So I think here's a great opportunity for people to skill up and to be able to show and give some support to those people.
Thank you for that, Tim. So that's a great insight into what people who, business advisors would get from the course. One of the things I'm curious about is, as an advisor, when you're working with somebody, what would be the main signs to look out for in regards to the mental well-being of our clients?
That's a really interesting question, because if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I'd say I have no idea. I ran a bookkeeping practice and I had many, many, many clients. And if I look back now, because hindsight's a wonderful thing, on occasions, a lot of those people are in distress. And the signs that I now are able to recognize that they probably were things like they were absent, couldn't get hold of them. Even when something really important had to be done, they just weren't there. Often they were in meetings and they weren't really present. there would be times when sometimes they would be quite tense or angry. So there was a whole realm of different things that were going on, changes in behavior. If you think about that in particular, if you think about the clients that you work with on a regular basis, you know them pretty well. So often what you may see is a change in behavior or something that's not right. Now, it could be that they're having just an off day like we all have, or it could, if it's going on and you notice it more than a few times, it could be indicating that something else is not right. And it may not always be business is not all right. Maybe it's something to do with their mental health. And I think I've learned a lot, and why I loved, working with Beyond Blue, I've learned a lot about understanding and being able to sit there and talk to other people and notice changes, and then to be able to start a very supportive and conversation with them that shows empathy without being too confronting. So being able to share that, hopefully some people might say, well, I've got a client and you know what? They haven't been present lately. Maybe there's something going on and maybe it's good to start a conversation.
Right, thank you. Linda, do you want to add to that?
I think possibly the only thing to add there to Tim's brilliant summary, I think those changes in behaviour are key. I think sometimes as business advisors, you're also really aware of the circumstances around the individuals as well. And not just the individual's response, but also some of the challenges that they're facing. And if you think of this year, that might be some of the work challenges if their businesses are in distress. We know that can be a huge stressor. So even if that person isn't showing any personal signs, even just checking in and saying, hey, you're facing X, Y, Z, and having a conversation in those circumstances can sometimes be really powerful and quite enabling for the person, because they're still, it's not about them, it's just recognizing that they're in challenging circumstances as well. So looking at the environment, looking at the circumstances the business and the person is operating in, and just like we've been saying all year, reaching out, staying connected and checking in on everyone, it's such a powerful thing to do. And the real aim of the course is just to help people feel a bit more confident, and give some practical strategies around having some of those chats. So yeah, but otherwise everything Tim said is absolutely perfect. So
yeah, I did the course, and there's some key indicators that you have highlighted in that are, if you look at them in isolation, they may be different people could cope, but if there's a number of indicators, it can profoundly impact somebody's mental well-being. And I know, look, I've been in situations myself, and I know my advisors often intuitively know something isn't right with their client, but having they find it a difficult conversation to have, and they can create fear that they might get it wrong, or that they're crossing a boundary with their client. How do we overcome this?
Tim, I'll let you.
All right.
I might let you go first there.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Well, you overcome it by being better educated. So if you think about mental health, if you think about the course, the very first module is all about what is mental health and what are the conditions and things like that. So I think that's really important, because for us to be able to support other people, we have to kind of understand and we have to have knowledge. So I think that's really good. I think the other part is that there is a lot of fear. What if I get it wrong? I don't know what I'm going to say. Am I going to fumble over it? Will they sack me? There's all these things that go through, and they're real feelings as well. So there's two parts, two comments I want to make there. One is that if we're looking after our mental health, if we're really taking care of us, then we're often in a really, really good position to feel really comfortable saying to someone, how are you going? Whatever that conversation is, how are you going? Are you okay? Are you feeling? I've noticed that you've been a bit absent lately. Is there anything going on that I can, that you'd like to talk about or support? Whatever those words are, it doesn't really matter. It's about showing care. But once you're in a great frame of mind, once you're looking after you, it's so much easier to do. And then when you do that, people have asked me this a lot, do it in your speak. So yeah, have a look at the training, have a look at all those things, look at some of the comments and some great information, but then put it into your words. Because if you're a client of mine, Jackie, and I was chatting to you a lot, and I came up and I had this rather stilted conversation about mental health, and I'm just like I was reading off a script, you'd be like, what the heck's going on? Mm. But if we genuinely sat down and I paid all my attention to you, and I simply asked how are things going, is everything okay? Then we would probably get into a conversation, and you would probably feel okay about that. And the other side of it is that if the person doesn't want to talk, that's okay as well. So the whole point there is just be genuine, just be you, put it in your speak, and just start to do it in your everyday. And once you do, then it's going to come off easy and you'll feel really comfortable with it. And I guarantee you two things. One is you'll feel good, and so will the other person.
I think Tim's hit the nail on the head there, and certainly the research backs that up as well. We've got really good evidence that there's still a lot of stigma. Generally, the community dial's improving in that most people want to help each other, but a lot of people are still really anxious about speaking out around mental health, particularly for themselves. So the more we can normalise everyday conversations about mental health, the more we can have it on the agenda and just talk about it day to day, that's important. And I think as well, one of the big lessons of this year, where businesses have found to be really powerful, is speaking vulnerably. And just to give you an example, I'm in Melbourne. I'm in Metro Melbourne. And so for my workplace, for Beyond Blue, it's been up until 12 p.m. last night, we've been in lockdown for the last 3 months again. And it's been a pretty hard old year. But we talk about it. We talk about how we're doing. We talk about the good times and the bad times. And we talk about that at all levels of the business. And the more you can just keep having those chats and the sense check, and it might be work related or not work related, it's easier to keep then having those conversations because you have the trust there. So I think making it safe and normal to talk about mental health is an important and empowering step for everybody. And it's a good part of self-care as well. So,
yeah. And speaking about self-care, we did research of people, business people, and how they were impacted by during lockdown. And what we found was 9 out of 10 of our survey respondents indicated that their stress levels were at a high or extremely high stress through the lockdown. And the people they reached out to were, their advisors. So there were coaches or mentors, or their accountants and bookkeepers. So the audience here, you were dealing with people with these extreme at these extreme levels. So I'm curious about, how do advisors consider their own mental well-being as part of this course?
Well, I think that's certainly why we intentionally put the module around self-care fairly high up in the order of the modules. And that was a really great example of some of the feedback we actually got in the consultation. I think that was Tim's feedback. Originally it was planned a bit later. But I think this idea that you can't pour from an empty cup, that you've got to put on your own oxygen mask in order to help others, has been so true this year. And I think it's also that modeling of behaviour in order to help others. It's so much easier to have a conversation if you're feeling okay yourself. And I guess some of the you know, the really practical evidence-based ways. I'm sure we've all heard this and we all generally know what to do, but just a good reminder, you know, having that balanced but flexible routine. Physical activity is huge. I know for both Tim and I, it's a big one. Eating healthy foods, a really big one this year as well has been sleep. All efforts to keep on top of sleep, and of course, managing some of our media and information intake. I think a lot of people, I imagine a lot of people on the line today are now spending an awful lot of time on screens. Part of that also though is social media. Quite a lot of people have said that, particularly in the more heightened points of the pandemic, they were sort of checking for updates all the time, every day, just trying to really stay on top of things. And there's some really good evidence that this wasn't terribly healthy. So as a general trend, trying to really moderate some of our information inputs to try and limit that cognitive load and have the space to think, to feel, to work, and to really be effective is so powerful. In the small business context, I've given you a lot of personal factors there, but doing a bit of planning around mental health is really powerful. That can be having a personal wellbeing plan. It can be having a business wellbeing plan as well. And an example of some of that planning you might do is, even if you don't jump on and do the training today, but if you ever had to support somebody or you're ever concerned about somebody, having a few strategies that you've already planned out in advance is really powerful and effective around mental health. Knowing who you would call, knowing, for example, that you can call the Beyond Blue support service, not just around if you yourself are in distress, but if you're worried about somebody else and you're looking for somebody to talk that through. If you've spoken to somebody on the phone and you're a bit worried about them, a lot of those support services are also just coaching on how you might help somebody else as well. So that process of planning is incredibly powerful and protective around mental health. And I'm just mindful of the time and I'm prattling on a bit, so I might throw it to Tim now. But yeah, I'm really keen to hear as well. Tim's got some beautiful reflections on how he looks after himself as well as a small business owner and advisor in various times past.
Thanks, Linda. I think first and foremost, as Linda was saying about oxygen mask on first, looking after your mental health is not a selfish act. And I think that's really, really important. And in the industry that I was in, I watched a lot of bookkeepers and accountants not look after themselves because they were doing everything for the client. So they didn't have any boundaries around their work. They weren't taking care of themselves. There were a lot of things that were missing. And I think sometimes they felt a bit guilty. Oh, if I spend time on me, I've got my clients, I've got work to do, I've got my staff. You know, how are they going to think if I'm doing a selfish act? But absolutely categorically, it's not a selfish act. And Linda's quite right. I was one of the people that said in the training when we went through it, can you bring the module about looking after yourself to the front? Because often people will get into a situation, they'll learn about a lot of things and work out how to look after everyone else. And the big person they forgot about is themselves. So each and every one of you that are out there that are frontline with your clients, you need to look after yourself. And the only person in control of that is you. And, you know, as Linda said, you know, there's routine, there's physical exercise, there's all sorts of stuff. I am very structured and I'm a early morning exercise person and I'm down at Bronte Beach swimming all year round. Now, some people might say I'm mad, but it's good for your immune system as well as other things, good for anxiety. But I have structure around that because that sets my day up. Whatever that routine is for you is important. And it's a combination of, you know, some physical things, some lifestyle things, some work-related things, and packaging that together and how it suits you. Some people are not morning people. That's absolutely fine. But the most important thing around any of that is making sure that you do have a plan, that you are looking after yourself. And then there are a number of things in terms of lifestyle, in terms of social, in terms of our thoughts, in terms of our work, that all package together for our better mental health. And yes, it's been tough over the last 6 months, but you need to be kind to yourself and start to filter out a lot of things that you can't change. You need to be informed, but you can't take on every responsibility. And that's the same in a lot of cases as an advisor to clients. You can't be everything for them. You can do the service you provide, you can provide them support, but you're not their counsellor.
Yeah.
Linda?
Look, I appreciate that. One of the things that I found by looking at the course was the planning, and actually sitting down and thinking about it and planning it. And I've got to say, I have been, I was guilty of a couple of the things, and the number one thing is eating lunch at my desk and not taking time out to eat lunch. And I'm a terrible example for everybody in the office. And I see that's my responsibility as being a leader, as if I'm showing bad habits, it's not good for my team. And so, I took that away from it, and seeing that how important it is if you're leading a team as well. So for those who are online today, if you're leading a team of accountants or bookkeepers or advisors, what are you modeling to your team? And what expectations are you setting that could be putting pressure on your team, but you may not, you're unconscious of it. So I there was some great tools in the course around looking at what do we do as a business, and what do I do as an employee. So I think that that's and if you look at it and you're running a team, you could, you've got something for everybody in your business. And I think it'd be a great discussion to have as a business as well, is like, let's put this on our agenda. What are we doing? Because technology has made us, really not look after ourselves. While it's great and it's saved us a lot of time, it's actually really taken up a lot of our, the boundaries are really, it's not clear boundaries anymore. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people. What would you say about that? I'm curious about that and what you've seen, Linda, with small business owners, or Tim.
Can I just make one comment? I think that all of that is incredibly valid. I think the other thing to remember is, and I love the chart that Linda starts off with, the mental health continuum, because we move along there. We're not in a static state. Is no matter what the situation is, Jackie, don't punish yourself if you're having an off day or you don't get it right one day. Because I think sometimes we can tend to go, or I've tended to go into that and started to punish myself. Or why am I feeling better? Or I know all these things I should be doing. Sometimes we just have off days. Sometimes things don't work. Yeah. But we shouldn't punish ourselves, and particular as advisors. Maybe you'll try that conversation with the client and it'll go a bit clunky. But better having done it than not done it at all. But don't punish yourself, because at least you're showing some care and support. Linda?
I think we always talk about self-care, but we don't always talk about self-compassion. And for me, self-compassion is a really critical part of self-care. Part of looking after yourself is also sometimes trying to moderate that voice and that internal modeling, that we should really be speaking to ourselves the same way we would speak to someone we care about, we respect, and when we're doing it in a respectful way. And so often, particularly when you're under a lot of stress, it's really easy to get stuck in some of those negative thinking traps. So it's really, really important then, I think, one of those self-care strategies is to take a moment, check in, and sort of make sure that you're being reasonable with yourself as well. Back to your digital question, Jackie, I think technology needs to be managed. It's like most things. There are some absolutely brilliant things about it. I think, for example, having access to free online training is a real game changer, and that's important. Like you say, though, it's really important to have boundaries around how we spend our time. I mean, sleep's really good for us, but we don't want to sleep all day. So I think those practices, Tim mentioned being really structured. I think one of the things I found about myself, particularly this year and particularly with the extended lockdown, is I've had to become a lot more protective of my calendar. So it's sort of making time for flexibility, but also really carving out a bit more of that, what I can, what I can't do. Work in progress, I think definitely something I have to keep chipping away at. It's hard, but be kind to yourself, keep working on it. And one really practical thing I'd encourage everyone to do is embedded in that training and also on the Beyond Blue website, there's a tool called a personal wellbeing plan. And it's kind of like an example of a lot of people might be familiar with the idea of a gym plan or a rehab plan, or if you hurt your wrist, you might have a little exercise plan for your wrists. And the wellbeing plan is really, it's about healthy you, or you on a day where you want to do the right thing by your mental health, making a strategy for you to both stay well, but also look after yourself when you're not having one of those great days. And the way the plan works is it sort of goes in and it starts with reminding you of what are your strengths, what are some of the things you've done well before, what are your reasons for working, what are all those good things that you can hold on to, and then starting to call out some of the signs that you might be struggling a bit. It might be that the environment you're in, it could be the end of month where you've got a lot of invoicing and it's a lot of deadlines at the same time. So you've got a lot of time pressure impacting you. And then the next section is sort of what are some of the signs for you that you might be struggling in that environment. It might be you're getting more forgetful. It might be that you get to the end of the day and you just don't have the space to exercise, and you suddenly discover you might not be getting your step goals or doing some of those other things, or you could be getting a bit short, or other changes in behavior. And some of the effective strategies that can help pep you up, but are sometimes less accessible when you're not feeling great. So it might be that song that always makes you feel good, or the person that you can call, or going and cuddling your dog. They're little things, but sometimes they're the things that we forget to do when we're in that moment. So that process of planning, the process of having a strategy in place, even just doing that in advance can be really helpful to help you when you're not having a great day. So I'd encourage everyone to, whether you fill in the form or not, take a shot going through that process, because I think a little bit of that planning in a work context and a personal context is really effective. But yeah, that's just a little practical example from the training and some of the resources that you can all access for free. So yeah, thank you.
It's great, Linda. Jacqueline, I know we should open up the questions to the floor. So have you got a few questions that you'd like to pose?
We've had a few questions come through, and thank you. That was an incredible conversation to hear, and we've certainly generated quite a few questions. So thank you, Jackie, Linda, and Tim. So first up, we have one from Sue, and Sue, I guess it's really a question for you, Tim, because Sue has raised that it feels even a little bit more uncomfortable to ask these questions over video conference rather than being face to face with people. And have you found that, and do you have any strategies for that?
I think I was reading Sue's comment before, and I think that's very valid, because often when we're sitting opposite someone, we can pick up body language cues much easier. Although we're probably all getting a bit more skilled at doing it now because we've all been on so many Zoom meetings. I think, though, that shouldn't hold you back. I think you still need to, I think in her comment there, she's been working with people for 4 to 5 months. So there's some rapport there. And you can still have a conversation online. And because it's about listening and asking questions. And I can see you now, Sue, and I can see the position waving at me. So automatically now I read something from you, but now I can see you. I get a much better connection with you. So I think I could probably have a conversation with you about a few things. And particularly if you've worked with these people for 4 to 5 months, then don't let that hold you back. if you've noticed something, just ask them.
Thanks, Tim. I have another question from Diane, and Diane said she'd like to help fellow members of their local Chamber of Commerce who may be struggling, and she's assuming that the course would be useful to that end. Is there anywhere else that you'd recommend for resources?
I've just posted a link to the training. I think the Chamber of Commerce is a brilliant example. I think anyone touching business is great. If you're interested in other sources of information for small businesses, Ahead for Business from Everymind is a really great app that's targeting small business. But if you have a look at headsup.org.au, there's a page there on small businesses, and it links not just to Beyond Blue resources, but also other related organisations as well. So it's a really great rounding house for a lot of information. But again, Chamber of Commerce is an excellent example. We, for example, we've been chatting with the ATO. I think anyone who regularly speaks with small business, my parents, for instance, live in regional New South Wales, and the Everymind Institute's doing a program. They're looking at how do you chat with the local doctor? How do you get the local hairdresser? How do you get everyone who's regularly speaking with people in business or otherwise around this sort of activity? So my view is there's something in it for everyone. Share it with your business communities, and we'd love you to get the word out there. So yeah, please feel free, post away on social media. We love that sort of thing. So
wonderful. Thanks, Linda. Sarah has asked how to access the course, and we will send you a link on our thank you email, Sarah, but where we'll give you the direct link to where you can get access to that course. And it is all free, isn't it, Linda? So there's no cost to that.
There's a little link in the short links in the chat now as well, so people can jump in straight away. But definitely check out the email that comes afterwards too.
Thank you. Okay, so.
Can I just jump in? Russell had a question around where your role ends and where you should be hands off. And I think I mentioned something about boundaries, and also mentioned about not being their counsellor. I think as advisors, we understand where our roles and responsibilities lie, and sometimes it's easy. I'm talking about myself now. Sometimes it's easy to want to help them in everything. And sometimes when you step into areas that you're perhaps not that comfortable with, or you think you should help with them, but then you're not really sure, that's when it can start to get a little bit tricky. And I think sometimes what's better for perhaps the client in that case is that you're really clear about what the boundaries are. But the other thing about it is, if you think about the course, there's a lot of support material. So sometimes you can reference them to that material or make a couple of suggestions there without having to delve too deeply in it. And that's actually a nice thing to do, because it shows care and support, but it does define where you're going to stop. And I think it's important that each of us as individuals are really clear about where we do that.
Can I just add to that too, Tim? One of the things that I also encourage people to do, and I do it with our advisors, is if you've had one of those difficult conversations or you found yourself faced with that, who do you debrief with? Like, who do you go and just have a chat with? And we have a number of things in place in our organisation, where depending upon how challenging the conversation is, they can go and talk to a therapist, to just coming and chatting to one of our colleagues, and just because you can carry this weight, did I do it right? And particularly if they didn't take up what you were suggesting to them too. Like, there's that feeling of that I failed in that because they just ignored, I could see it, but they're not seeing it, and I didn't deliver it right. So I think there's that other thing to look at, at the other end of the spectrum. Once you've done it, what do you do to debrief that conversation with somebody.
Thanks, Jackie. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
So Linda, did you want to comment on that?
I agree. I was just noticing one of the questions about triage steps, and I think reflect, Tim, you said before about using your own language. I think the goal of the training is really to help build up confidence to recognize the signs. And we generally, it does look different. It can look different for different people. And there's no right or wrong there as well. So I think building up that comfort to have the conversation is key. And I think maintaining the boundaries is really important as well. We're not training you up to be counsellors and psychologists. We're just giving you a little bit of extra skill around your current business practices. And also, I think the real goal that Beyond Blue wants to see is, I mean, mental health it's a capacity for business. It can help you do business better. So it is about maintaining those boundaries. There's a concept that you hear sometimes, and it's about accompanying. You can be there for people. You can help show them where information is. You can help make them feel safe. They're still clients, and it's not about going further than that as well. So if we can all each feel a little bit more confident, then that's a really important step to helping all Australians and everyone in Australia achieve the best possible mental health. Tim, anything you think I've missed there?
No, I would just two things, and one will be back to Jackie's comment. Firstly is that it's not about trying to make an assessment of them either.
Yeah.
If you're noticing a change in behaviour, it's just you've noticed a change in behaviour. What that actually is a direct result of is for a professional person to find out. So they go to their GP or whatever course they go down, potentially, if they want to do that. So I don't think you need to worry about, I've got to make a value judgment, or I've got to be knowledgeable about anxiety or depression or something like that, to start to have a conversation with them about perhaps that's what it is.
And it's not your job to fix people as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, sorry, Tim.
And then the other piece for your turn, Jackie, is if you've got a wellbeing plan that Linda talked about, if you're having those conversations and you're feeling that you haven't had the right conversation, you want to debrief, part of your own better mental health is having your support network around you. So who are those people, Jackie, that you would go to and go, I've just had a conversation with this client and I don't think it went very well and I don't know what to do. And sometimes having that sounding board and that support person to support you. Because remembering that when you step into that realm, you're stepping out, sometimes slightly out of your comfort zone. And that's, Linda, sorry.
I've got one last probably practical example from this year. And this is more a Melbourne than a New South Wales example. But I can think of Are You OK conversations this year where a lot of people are already getting help. And I think sometimes when people are going through challenging things, they're not going to be looking great all the time. If you think around the worst stages of lockdown, it's just hard. And that's where often, if you lend a supporting ear, that support is really powerful in itself. It's not always about encouraging someone. The goal isn't always getting someone to go do something. It is a really great thing, but just reaching out and giving that human connection is so powerful in itself. And I think maybe the key takeaways from the literature again and again is we know that relationships are protective for mental health. We know a really key goal for small businesses is we want to build people into more protective relationships day to day. So it might be that some of the people you work with as clients are also friends, they're also colleagues, they're also supports, and that's a really good thing. It's probably good for your business, but it's also really good for your mental health. So I think the training, it's about empowering, but it's also just about the little confidence and the connection as well. So I take those positives away from it too. It's quite broad, but I hope there's good positives in there for everybody. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Linda. I know probably we might make this our last question for today. So what are some of the broader trends Beyond Blue is observing this year in the business community around workplace mental health?
I'll answer that one really quickly, and I might be able to share out some more information. I think at a really high level, we've seen an awful lot of reaching out. So services like Beyond Blue have had incredibly large outreach from the community. There's an additional service that's been established, the Coronavirus Mental Wellbeing Support Service, where people can get free additional counselling, which is tailored around COVID. It's not just for people in lockdown. If your business is still facing a lot of the impacts of COVID-19, if you're still experiencing a bit of increase in work or reduction in work, it's a service for everyone. And keep it in mind, particularly if you don't have access to EAP, it can be a really good replacement. In terms of the trends we're seeing though, over time, we're seeing a lot of compounding inequality, where at the start around March, there's a lot of everyone all in it together. As the year has gone on, we're seeing more young people impacted. A lot of small businesses are impacted. People in insecure work are impacted. Where you live has a really big function as well. How well prepared you were around mental health coming into the pandemic matters, and what you're doing around mental health now, not just for support, but also protection matters as well. So I think there's a bit of variation over time. A lot of those trends tend to cross over, which we forget. We want to put someone in a bucket, but often they're in a few buckets. But I think the really key thing is there's a sentiment where people are tending to say that, and I might incorrectly paraphrase this, but they're putting on a brave face, but inside they're very worried. I think it's a good reminder for this year. A lot of people are doing it tough. A lot of people might be doing it tough for reasons that we might not see. And so just be kind to yourselves and each other. It's a hard year, and it's never been such an important year to not only get support, but really protect your mental health as well. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here. Big thank you to Tim. Big thank you to Realise for hosting us. So.
Thanks so much, Linda. And Tim, do you have any last thoughts, Tim, on what we've talked about today?
Thanks, Jacqueline. My last thought would be, as advisors, dealing with small business, we really have a responsibility, I believe, to be better educated around mental health. So I think I would again encourage everybody to do the course, because you become better educated, you'll learn about how to look after yourself, you'll learn how to look after the others. And the most important thing at the end of it all is, I think you'll have in your toolkit the ability to support people quite naturally. And that's a great thing, because that'll just make everybody feel better. And there's no right or wrong, but I think that's a really great outcome. And I would encourage everybody to do the course.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Tim. And Jackie, did you have anything else to add?
Look, I just feel like I'm very grateful to have both Linda and Tim and share the platform on this really important topic, and appreciate your depth of knowledge and your generosity today. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So just quickly before we close, we've got an abundance of online events to help you grow your business. So I encourage you to take a look and head to our website, www.realise.business. And thank you once again to Beyond Blue for developing this course in the support of health and wellbeing of small business owners and business service providers. And thank you to Tim and Linda and Jackie for your time today. And stay connected to Realise by following us on one of all of our 3 social channels, and head to our website or call our head office if you'd like to speak to a business advisor yourself. So a recording of today's session will be available with a link provided by our event manager, Courtney. And Courtney, thank you for running such an excellent session today behind the scenes. And thank you for everyone for joining us, and we will now close the session.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Bye.
Thank you very much.